They thought they had made it. A dream mansion, towering pillars, Italian marble floors, and a gate that whispered wealth. But beneath the glittering chandeliers and sprawling lawns lies a silent tragedy, one that started with ambition and ended in financial ruin. This is not just a story about bad decisions. It's about a life built on illusions and how one couple's thirst for status led them to a place where even tap water became a luxury. The first time Marcus stood before the gates of the mansion, his hands trembled, not from fear, but from disbelief. The wrought iron bars, adorned with golden filigree, opened like the jaws of a promise too good to be real. He looked back at his wife, Elena, whose eyes were brimming with tears of pride. They had made it. After 2 decades of climbing the corporate ladder, hustling side gigs, sacrificing vacations, and living on canned tuna during the 2008 crash, this was their victory parade. The real estate agent smiled too wide, as if she already smelled the commission. 5 bedrooms, 7 baths, heated pool, a wine cellar built into the hillside, imported marble from Verona. And yes, that chandelier in the foyer? Swarovski. Marcus barely heard her. His attention was on the staircase, winding like a ribbon of opportunity toward the vaulted ceilings. This wasn't just a house. It was a crown. And after years of feeling like they were one missed payment away from collapse, it finally seemed like the fear could be retired. They weren't born rich. Marcus grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment above a liquor store in Queens, raised by a single mother who worked 3 jobs and still came home with cracked heels and empty pockets. Elena was the daughter of Mexican immigrants, the first in her family to finish college. Their love story had started in a cramped office cubicle, where they bonded over broken printers and dreams far bigger than their paychecks. When the loan was approved, Marcus felt like the universe had finally apologized for all the times it had laughed in his face. They signed the papers with champagne in hand. A photo was taken. Elena kissing the keys, Marcus throwing his fist in the air like a boxer after the final round. They posted it online with the caption, "Hard work pays off." The likes rolled in. So did the envy. But the numbers didn't lie. They had secured the home on an adjustable-rate mortgage, something they barely understood. The first year the payments were manageable, deceptively so. They liquidated some retirement savings to cover the down payment. The rest? Credit lines and a risky personal loan from a peer-to-peer lending platform. Their financial planner had advised caution. Marcus laughed it off. "If we don't take the leap now, we'll be stuck forever." Elena hesitated but trusted her husband. She always did. They calculated their monthly budget like a fragile tower of Jenga blocks. If they skipped dinners out, paused their kids' college contributions, and both hit their quarterly bonuses, they could make it work. For a while, it did. They hosted lavish dinners. The neighbors admired their landscaping. Even the local HOA president, a notoriously difficult man, complimented their taste. Marcus bought a new suit. Elena started a lifestyle blog from the glass-walled sunroom. They were the people they used, to watch from afar. But beneath the marble and the smiles, cracks were already forming. The electric bill for the first month was triple what they expected. The pool needed constant maintenance. The chandelier required special bulbs that cost more than a grocery trip. Every new piece of furniture was financed. Every decorative plant came with a monthly upkeep subscription. They told themselves it was normal, part of the transition, that all new homeowners felt this stretch, but they avoided checking the balance on their credit cards. And neither of them dared mention that they were already 2 weeks late on the second mortgage payment. Then came the worst sign of all. One quiet morning, as Elena prepared coffee in their gourmet kitchen, she noticed something odd. The faucet sputtered, gurgled, and then nothing. No water. No warning. She called Marcus, panic in her voice. He was silent for a long time before whispering, "We missed the utility bill. I thought I paid it, but—" The silence that followed was louder than any argument they'd ever had. The dream they could touch was beginning to dissolve in their hands. The shut-off notice was printed on cheap paper, but to Elena it felt heavier than the deed to the mansion. Folded once, then once more, and placed quietly into the drawer near the sink. The same drawer now cluttered with unopened envelopes marked "Urgent." She stared at it long enough to memorize the font, the threat. Then she closed the drawer and made herself a cold breakfast, pretending that boiling water hadn't become an impossibility. To the outside world, everything remained immaculate. The Maserati still purred down the street every morning. The Instagrams posts still showed sunset wine tastings by the pool. Elena kept up her blog, writing about interior decor while using filters to hide the empty flower vases and smudges on the windows. Marcus smiled at the office, accepted congratulations, and carried the weight like a ghost tied to his spine. The illusion was costly, but they were too deep in to let it crack. They told themselves it was temporary. One bonus, one client deal, and they'd be back on track. Meanwhile, they financed everything, from groceries to Elena's blog photography gear. The bank accounts bled silently, and their pride tightened the tourniquet. They couldn't admit it to anyone, especially not their parents, who still asked how the palace was treating them. They couldn't let their children, twin girls, just 9 years old, sense the panic. So they rationed water from gallon jugs bought in bulk, used gym showers before school, and lit candles in the master bathroom to make their nightly camping showers seem like an adventure. But the children noticed the change. They always do. "Why don't we swim anymore?" one asked. "The pool's being cleaned," Elena answered, her voice too fast, too thin. The truth was simpler. The pool service had canceled them after 2 missed payments. Then came the day Marcus stood outside the locked gate, unable to get in. The mansion's smart gate system, purchased on a payment plan, had deactivated due to non-payment. He scaled the stone wall in a suit, sweating through his shirt, while a neighbor filmed it from their balcony and laughed. The video went viral locally. Marcus told everyone it was a prank. Inside, he broke down and cried into the marble floor. They tried everything to keep afloat. Elena applied for influencer sponsorships. Most were scams. She bought followers to look legitimate. Marcus began taking on high-risk consulting gigs, working 16-hour days. Their nights became silent, spent staring at opposite walls in the same room. They still dressed up for neighborhood parties, hiding overdue mortgage letters in kitchen drawers. They practiced lies like mantras. Then Elena made a choice. She started pawning items: a designer handbag, a rare vintage necklace, her mother's gift on their wedding day. She cried while handing it over, told herself it was just until things improved, but they didn't. They got worse. A second utility shut off. This time, the electricity. Marcus returned home late one night to a pitch-black mansion. The alarm system had gone offline. The air was thick and stale. The children were asleep on the floor near the fireplace, where candles flickered next to half-eaten bowls of cereal. That night, Marcus admitted it out loud for the first time. "We're losing everything." Elena didn't argue. She only whispered, "I know." They were still living in a mansion, but not as owners, not even as tenants. They were squatters in a dream they couldn't afford, prisoners of an image they had created, fed by ambition, and strangled by shame. The walls didn't speak, but the silence told the whole story. There comes a point in financial ruin when the shame becomes a second skin. You stop flinching at the sound of mail hitting the floor. You stop answering numbers that begin with 800. You learn to live with the buzz of anxiety as background noise until it becomes silence. And silence is always worse. For Marcus and Elena, that silence meant pretending. pretending that the lights hadn't flickered all night because of a tripped breaker, not overdue accounts, pretending their daughters were suddenly fascinated by candles and flashlight games, pretending that everything was still under control, when nothing was. They were isolated. The mansion, once their proud symbol, had become a fortress of denial. The laughter of neighbors outside became unbearable, not because they mocked them, but because they reminded Marcus of what he was losing. Every barbecue he declined, every school event they skipped, was another stitch in the fabric of their social invisibility. And when you vanish socially, desperation fills the void. Marcus began lying to colleagues, not just white lies, but entire, fabricated narratives about side investments, overseas bank delays, accounting errors that explained why he couldn't cover lunch or join the weekend retreat. He even told his assistant to hold calls from his own accountant. Each excuse he gave out was a lifeline to a fiction that no longer fooled even him. Elena took a darker path. She reconnected with old acquaintances online, some distant, some once intimate. She started requesting small loans, carefully worded to hide their reality. "It's just a temporary gap," she'd say. "We're waiting for a transfer to clear." Her tone was casual, breezy, but inside, every ask scraped away, another piece of her dignity. Eventually, even her jewelry box was empty. She pawned everything, her wedding ring included. She told Marcus she had lost it while cleaning the bathroom, and the lie stuck in her throat like broken glass. He didn't believe her, but he didn't challenge her either. By then, the web of lies they both spun was too tangled to escape without bleeding. Then came the worst decision of all. They broke into their daughter's education savings accounts. It wasn't a conversation. It was a quiet consent, a shared look across the dinner table. Elena logged in. Marcus looked away. Thousands withdrawn in a few clicks. It was enough to pay the mortgage for one more month, enough to keep the lights on. Enough to feel normal for just a few more days, but nothing felt normal anymore. The children began asking questions. Why their clothes weren't new this year. Why their tablets disappeared. Why Mom cried in the laundry room. Why Dad spent more time on the porch staring at the sky than at them. One night, after putting them to bed, Marcus sat alone in the foyer, beneath the grand chandelier that once symbolized their triumph. He looked up at the crystals, some now missing from a failed cleaning experiment, and whispered, "I failed. Not as a provider, not as a businessman, as a father." Elena stood behind him. She didn't touch him, didn't speak. She just slid down the wall and sat beside him on the cold marble floor. They didn't cry. There were no tears left, just silence and desperation. The next morning, Marcus didn't go to work. He called in sick, then sat in his car for hours, engine off. He considered things he never thought he would. He imagined insurance policies. He imagined exits. It was the lowest point, until he saw his daughters drawing in the back seat. It was their family. Smiling. Standing in front of the mansion. Hope is cruel when it's rooted in lies. That same day, he received an email. Foreclosure proceedings had been initiated. They had less than 30 days. The end was no longer a distant threat. It was now on their doorstep. There's a unique kind of madness that grows in empty rooms. Not the kind filled with clutter or noise, but those rooms that were once alive with ambition and laughter, now echoing only regret. The mansion that Marcus and Elena once worshipped had become a mausoleum of silent failures. Every hallway, every ornate window, whispered reminders of what they tried to be. The house was never truly theirs, not in the way homes are meant to be. It was always borrowed, leased from illusions, held hostage by appearances. Now, foreclosure loomed like a guillotine, and each day felt like a countdown not just to eviction, but to emotional collapse. Marcus no longer pretended to work. He stopped shaving, stopped dressing like a man who belonged in boardrooms. He sat in the home office, a room once adorned with certificates and dreams, now stripped bare. The mahogany desk had been sold. The bookshelves were empty. He stared. Out the window at the fountain they could no longer afford to keep running. Its dry stone basin seemed poetic. Beauty without function, grandeur without purpose. Elena had started locking herself in the bedroom during the day, telling the children she was meditating, praying, journaling. But the truth was simpler. She couldn't face the house anymore. Couldn't face Marcus. Couldn't face the shell of herself reflected in the gilded mirrors that lined the hallways. Their marriage, once forged in struggle and lit by shared victories, had withered. Not from infidelity, not from abuse, but from exhaustion. From the quiet war of unspoken blame. Marcus resented her for urging them to post the mansion photo online. He said it started the domino effect. Elena resented him for refusing to listen to her gut when the mortgage terms changed. But they never said these things out loud. They simply shared rooms like ghosts who once loved each other. The children were quieter now too. They no longer invited friends over. One of them had started wetting the bed again. The other had stopped eating dinner, saying the food tasted like sadness. No one corrected her. Then came the letter, hand-delivered. An official notice pinned to their grand double doors like a final verdict. The house would be auctioned within 14 days. The bank had rejected all their appeals. Marcus didn't speak for hours. He wandered from room to room, touching walls, remembering the day they painted them. Remembering Elena dancing barefoot on the marble, the girls chasing each other up the staircase. Remembering joy. Then forgetting how it felt. Elena packed in silence, not because she had hope, but because she had no other choice. That night, they sat together in the empty dining room, eating cereal with plastic spoons, surrounded by boxes. Marcus broke the silence first. "I don't know who I am anymore." Elena didn't answer right away. Then she said, "We forgot who we were before this house." And that was the truth. The mansion had become their identity, their prize, their prison. Stripped of it, they were forced to face the broken, raw versions of themselves. Ones they had hidden for too long under velvet drapes and imported stone. As the lights dimmed, because the power was running on borrowed time, they held hands, not as husband and wife, not as co-owners of a crumbling palace, but as survivors, of pride, of pressure, of the lie they lived for far too long. They didn't know what came next, only that it couldn't be worse than this. They were wrong, but also, somehow, right. Thank you for staying with us this far. If you're still watching, you're the kind of viewer who values truth over appearances, and that means more than you know. But don't go anywhere. The most powerful part of this story is yet to come. Chapter 5. A tap, a lesson. A life rebuilt. The final morning in the mansion came not with drama, but with stillness. No movers, no farewell ceremony. Just 4 duffel bags, 2 confused children, and the quiet closing of a door that had once opened to their dreams. Marcus didn't look back as he pulled away from the circular driveway. Elena did, just once. She didn't cry. Not yet. She was still too numb for tears, but something inside her cracked, softly, like the sound of glass, settling after a storm. They moved into a 2-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of town. It was beige, boxy, and smelled faintly of mildew, but it had running water, hot, clean water that gushed from the taps without shame or interruption. The first night, Elena turned it on and just stood there, hands under the stream, as if rediscovering a forgotten luxury. She called Marcus over. "Come here," she said. "Feel this." He did. And in that moment they both laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was real. Their new life didn't come with chandeliers or imported marble. The furniture was mismatched, the carpet frayed. The kitchen window overlooked a parking lot, not a vineyard. But there was peace. Real peace. Not the curated, Instagrammable kind, but the kind that comes from no longer running. The girls adjusted. Better than expected. Children do. They started drawing again. They made new friends. They stopped asking questions and started making memories that didn't need to be filtered or explained. Marcus found work consulting for small businesses. Less glamorous but more meaningful. He taught workshops about financial literacy, sharing his mistakes without shame. People listened. Some cried. Some changed. It didn't make him rich, but it made him useful. Elena took a job at a community center. She ran after-school programs and used her voice to teach young girls about value, the kind that isn't measured in square footage or brand names. She no longer blogged about interiors. She wrote essays about integrity, about recovery, about survival. They learned to live, again, not for appearances, but for purpose. And then one evening, almost a year later, their new neighbor knocked on the door. An elderly woman named June, with kind eyes and a pitcher of lemonade. "I noticed your faucet was dripping outside," she said. "I've got a wrench if you'd like some help." Marcus chuckled. "Actually, we could use it." They fixed the leak together. And when June left, Elena turned to Marcus and said, "That's the kind of wealth I want. Not granite countertops, not imported art, but community, honesty, a life where asking for help didn't feel like failure." The mansion was gone. So was the shame. What remained was clarity, and a new kind of ambition, not to impress, but to endure, not to conquer, but to connect. And when people asked about the house now, they didn't hide. "We bought a mansion," Marcus would say, "and we lost it. But we found something better. And maybe, just maybe, that was the real fortune." What would you do if your dream became your downfall? Marcus and Elena's story isn't just a cautionary tale about money. It's a mirror, a warning, a path forward. Because in a world that sells image over integrity, sometimes losing everything is the only way to find what truly matters. Comment below. Have you ever lived a lie just to keep up appearances? What would you have done? In their place? Don't forget to subscribe, because the next story will shake you even more. And trust me, it's one you won't see coming.